Hi, I'm Carl Azus. The first question we're exploring today on CNN 10 is China's government holding masses of Chinese Muslims in concentration camps? That's what a U.S. defense official recently announced at a news briefing. The Uyghurs are a mostly Muslim ethnic group, and millions of them live in China. Historically, they have not had a great relationship with the Chinese government, and in recent years, the Chinese government has detained large numbers of Uyghurs. The U.S. says as many as 3 million of them in massive camps. Uyghurs who've been released from these camps say they're like prisons, aimed at getting rid of Uyghur culture and religion and instilling it with propaganda from China's communist government. That government has repeatedly denied holding large amounts of Uyghur citizens. China says it has set up what it calls training centers that are necessary to prevent terrorism. And a Chinese government-run newspaper says the nation's Xinjiang region, where many Uyghurs live, has been, quote, shielded from the flow of international terrorism, like the attack that occurred recently in Sri Lanka. A Chinese government official suggested that the U.S. abandon bias and, quote, stop interfering in China's domestic affairs. But an investigation by The Guardian, a British newspaper, suggested that China has destroyed dozens of mosques since 2016. And while China's government officially recognizes 5 religions, including Islam, that government is also officially atheist. And according to the Council on Foreign Relations, an American nonprofit research group, China's government exercises control over religion. Christian pastors, for example, have to undergo training to make sure their sermons are adapted to Communist Party guidelines. Reporting on the struggles of Uyghurs has challenges all its own. China doesn't have the same freedom of the press as America does, so American reporters there have found plenty of obstacles in their investigations.
So the CNN Beijing Bureau just spent a week reporting in the western Chinese province of Xinjiang, and it's not an easy place to do journalism. So we wanted to show you a little bit of what we went through, but I think more importantly, tell you why that matters. Xinjiang is the province where the U.S. says China has detained up to 2 million people, nearly all Muslims, in camps over the last few years. Activists say Beijing has done that to try and eliminate Islam within its borders, and ex-detainees have told CNN they were tortured inside while undergoing political indoctrination. China denies that and says these camps aren't prisons, but voluntary vocational training centers that are being used to not eliminate Islam, only Islamic extremism. Now, China's government says that Xinjiang is wide open for us to freely report there. Maybe in theory, but in reality, that's just not true. For example, upon landing there, our welcome gift was a government tail.
We've already been followed by 3 or 4 guys, including one of them who I've seen follow us from the second we got out of the baggage area.
That would be this man. He and at least a dozen others followed us every single hour of our 6-day trip, never more than 20 feet away. In the car, in the train station, in the hotel, in the room next to mine. So it's a bit of an odd feeling to be in your hotel room at 1 in the morning and knowing that on the other side of this connecting door, which leads to the room next door to mine, there's at least 3, 4 of the guys who have been following us around over the past couple days. It felt like intimidation tactics. They wanted us to know that we were being followed. And then, of course, there were the uniformed cops that showed up at odd hours.
We should check your passport and visa.
It's almost 1 a.m.
Yes. Also,
I know, but I was sleeping. It just seems unnecessary.
I'm sorry to bother you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So, this is what happens when you do journalism in Xinjiang. I've lived here for nearly 4 years, and I've watched as things have gotten tougher and tougher for foreign journalists on all types of different stories. Xinjiang is probably just the most extreme example. But beyond just being followed, there were the more obvious attempts to try and make sure that we saw nothing they didn't want us to. For example, a highway we were on was closed for hours due to an accident nowhere to be seen. Not to mention spontaneous roadblocks that specifically target foreigners and ethnic minorities. Our IDs were checked nearly 50 times in 6 days. And the second you book a flight or a train, the government knows about it. And you can tell that because, well, government officials are waiting for you upon arrival.
They clearly knew we were coming. They met us at the airport. They're checking our visas. They're telling us they want to accompany us for our own safety. But really, this is just stalling tactics. They know it, we know it, and yet this is the game we have to play.
China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs say they don't know anything about the harassment we faced, but said Xinjiang is, quote, open and hospitable.
The constant tales, the constant harassment, the constant delays, they're more than just inconvenient. They are specific tactics China's government has employed for a long time to prevent journalists from doing their jobs. But in the last few years, there is broad agreement in the foreign journalism community here that it's gotten worse, nowhere more so than Xinjiang. The end result is that it's nearly impossible to freely report on the hundreds of thousands of people that are likely languishing in camps right now, and that means that the rest of the world can't really see what's going on there. This is one of the biggest human rights stories on Earth, and as we saw firsthand, China is actively trying to cover it up.
10-second trivia. Which of these landmarks is the oldest? Stonehenge, the Colosseum, King Tut's tomb, or Chichen Itza? To visit the oldest monument on this list, you'd have to travel to Salisbury Plain, England, where you'd find Stonehenge. Archaeologists believe it was built in stages, starting around 3000 BC. But part of Stonehenge has been missing since 1958, and it wasn't until this week that its return was announced. Stonehenge was constructed with giant sarsen stones, sandstone blocks that are common in southern England. In the 1950s, cracks were found in one of the sarsens, so its core was drilled out and metal rods were put in it to keep it standing. But what happened to that core? An employee from the company that helped repair the sarsen held on to it. He put it on the wall of his office, and the man eventually moved to America, bringing the 3.5-foot core with him. The night before he turned 90 years old, he decided to return it to England, and the company that maintains the monument says it hopes the core will help them understand more about the prehistoric structure. One thing archaeologists and geologists don't know exactly is where Stonehenge's stones were mined. There are at least 2 other cores that were drilled out of Stonehenge in the 1950s, but where those are, like the monument itself, remains a mystery. Back in the 1920s, there was this fad called flagpole sitting. People would literally climb up on flagpoles and then just sit there, sometimes for days or weeks. Well, this happened Thursday morning in Florida. We're not sure exactly why the bobcat climbed to the top of an electric pole and then just sat there, but it was near a stretch of road called Alligator Alley, so maybe he was a scaredy cat. Anyway, there's not really a how-to manual on getting a bobcat off a pole, but a utility worker came along with a pole of his own, and after coaxing the cat a few times, the animal climbed down the same way he climbed up. Maybe firefighters can coax cats from trees, but it's not cat and dry when it's utilities. It'd be futility to try to simply seize a wild cat like he's a pet Siamese. It took cat-like reflexes and ambition for an animal to claw up to the pole position. But meow that he's down and safe as a kitten, they can say, "Scat cat, you ain't no electrician." I'm Carl Azus, and Fridays are awesome.